Imagine you're a game developer, and you're trying to think of creative ways to bring a fresh take on your video game. Everyone's been there. Well, obviously not everyone is a game designer, but everyone has been there in the sense that you've looked to create something new in your specific situation. This was the case for Ubisoft Massive back in 2016 when creating the survival mode that came to the Division 1. When survival was finally released after delays in game health updates, the mode played host to some of the scariest and toughest and arguably the most iconic enemies in almost all of gaming. This is the story of the Hunters. Hunters were first introduced to the Division in 2016, to great acclaim and a huge positive response from the player base. To set the scene a little bit for the player's disposition to the game at this point in the Division's history, you must know a little bit of the backstory that surrounded the survival mode. You see, survival was delayed due to the overwhelmingly bad state of the game before the release of the DLC. As I covered in some of my previous videos, the Division's state of the game was quite bad, but Massive managed to turn it around in a few ways. Number one, by listening to the community's feedback, and number two, implementing said feedback to make the game that the community actually wanted to play and felt rewarded by playing. But that's not the focus of this video, and if you want to hear more about that topic, I did an entire video about the community significance of that update. That was patch 1.4. The next update after patch 1.4 was the survival update, patch 1.5. This update furthered the state of the game by adding a brand new world tier and a myriad of quality of life changes to the game. In addition to these new changes and improvements, the Division survival mode was released. Here's a quick recap of the mode. The survival mode sees the agent stranded in the middle of Manhattan during a terrible snowstorm after their helicopter crashes, with no gear, no supplies to their name except a pistol, no communications, and an infection in their system that gives the agent an hour to live. Despite all of this, agents must still complete their mission to enter the Dark Zone, recover a set of experimental antivirals, and extract via helicopter. Up to 24 agents will have to scavenge for supplies, warm clothes, and equipment as they do battle against the cold, the disease, thirst, hunger, roaming enemy NPCs, and in the PvP mode, potentially other agents. Even extracting from the Dark Zone safely is not a guarantee, as someone, or something, is out there waiting for you. That someone, the Hunter, reveals themselves at the very end of the survival game mode, after entering the Dark Zone. Once inside the Dark Zone, agents will need to fight their way to the cure for the green poison located somewhere in the Dark Zone, and build a flare gun to call in an extraction. Once an extraction is called, the agents must survive 3 minutes as the helicopter comes to pick the player up. However, standing between the players and the extraction is a new type of enemy, the Hunter. Hunters are strong, elite-level enemies that act like other players, using skills and cover much like other players. The number of hunters that spawn at the extraction depends on the size of the group calling the said extraction, meaning one player spawns one hunter, two players spawn two, and so on. The players cannot extract until the hunters are defeated. Hunters have the ability to heal and use agent-like skills. They can use first aid, medkits, and more. While they possess agent-like skills, they're also some of the most intelligent NPCs in the game. They will run and hide to find cover, then heal just like an agent would. Sounds pretty cool, right? This is the exact type of challenge players wanted and needed during the time when the Division 1 was the main game. I remember specifically the first time I beat my Hunter in a solo survival game. I was incredibly pumped. The feeling you get when it's time to go to the extraction and face off against the player-like enemies really got the blood pumping. It's almost an indescribable feeling, like the feeling you get when you're about to get up in front of the class and make a presentation. It's terrifying for no reason. The feeling of tension and unease when you first get to the extraction, calling the helicopter, and then immediately feeling the pressure of the final encounter. When this mode first came out, the last encounter here was an absolute doozy. I hope that small montage was enough to exemplify for those who never experienced this, the risk and kind of dope way that hunters were introduced. Let me know down in the comment section below how you felt when you killed your first hunter. I'm very interested in hearing about that. They work so incredibly well as a scary enemy type because they're intimidating. They wear the SHD watches of agents they've killed. Like, come on. Getting close to a hunter that's focused on you is basically a death sentence. They have a mechanic that shocks you in place and then one hit melees you with their trademark combat axe. And honestly, that's one of the most terrifying mechanics in the entire Division franchise. Expanding upon the intimidation note, hunters possess the ability to heal themselves and use skills that your agent also possesses. Hunters can use first aid, they can use medkits, known as armor kits in the Division 2, and more. While they possess agent-like skills, they're also very intelligent. These NPCs will run and hide to find cover, and then they'll heal just like your agent. It's almost like fighting another player in the Dark Zone. The biggest thing about them though, and credit has to go to Massive and the design choices, but the allure of hunters is amplified by the mode they are found in. At the time, hunters existed only in the survival mode. To even fathom reaching a hunter, you have to invest at least 45 minutes to get all the way to the end of the survival run. If you don't extract, you lose all of the survival caches and loot that you've worked for, and the run would be way less lucrative if you can't defeat the hunter and extract at the very end. The stakes at the extraction therefore are incredibly high, amplifying the stress and anxiety you feel at the end of the game mode. These enemies were incredibly well received. And one of the reasons that the community loved the Division's survival mode so much is because of the hunters. The main idea and something to take away is that hunters are generally in situations where there are high stakes, amplifying the anxiety and challenge of the situation. Massive realized what they had here, and they decided to implement that into different areas of the game, to varying degrees of success. Keeping with the theme of high stakes, later in the Division's 1 life cycle, hunters were added to the underground mode to increase the challenge of the heroic level difficulty missions. Part of the mystery of the hunter is the way that they disappear if the group wipes and everyone dies. The hunter will despawn, and the chance to kill them will disappear. While the hunter represents a challenge, they also have the chance of dropping classified or exotic gear. So, not only do they present a challenge, they represent a significant boost to your character if you can manage to take them out. Outside of the survival mode, this is how they are set up to up the stakes using hunters as a proxy for difficulty and rewards all in one. This is just another reason why the hunters work so well in the Division game and why they're so well liked by the community. Partly for the same reason as Underground, hunters were added to the Resistance game mode. Wave 20, a boss wave, is comprised of hunters. Hunters are then added to the waves of enemies with increasing difficulty of each wave beyond 20, each with varying skills, armaments, and most notably, armor. They get tanky, guys. Resistance is a bit similar to survival because it's do or die when the hunters spawn. If you don't complete the wave, you will fail the mission and the resistance run is over. It's done. Finished. This is another masterful way of the Division increasing gameplay difficulty through encounters and varying enemy types instead of throwing more enemies and more health with more damage output at the player, since that's kind of boring. Moving on to the Division 2, hunters have a bit of an interesting role in the open world. They manage to keep their reputation as the most iconic enemies in the franchise, and everyone wants to know how to beat them for a very specific reason. Face masks. Hunter bodies always have the SHD watches of agents they've killed, and boy, there's been a lot of that. It's part of the reason why their character model is so intimidating. They look kind of really scary because they take SHD watches as trophies off the bodies of the agents they've taken out. Now in the Division 2, it's finally time to take some of their swag. The game designers created a fantastic system where you kill the hunters and then after their brutal murder, you receive their mask as a reward. This proved to be more effective of an incentive to kill the hunters than any classified piece or exotic weapon. Let me ask you this. Would you rather have a subpar exotic assault rifle, Eagle Bear, or a dope face mask that you get from killing a hunter? Obviously, I'd take both, and Massive made a system where you can get both of these types of rewards doing a similar activity. Both of these rewards require the completion of a secret task. The Eagle Bear requires raid keys hidden around the raid. You must know the locations of all of the caches in order to open the chest at the end of the raid. The hunter masks require specific criteria to be met, such as going to a certain location at a certain time of night and doing an emote to spawn the hunter. In both of these examples, there's an air of mystery about these encounters. We don't really know why the hunters do this. We don't know why they're at their specific location and what it takes to spawn them, but this is how they are. And that's part of the fun, the mystery of it. This is what makes them cool. It makes them the enemies that define the division and will continue to do so. Their mystery is what makes them unique. We don't know much about them. We know that they are like us. And imagining what they're about, what they want, why they're here, that's part of the fun. Filling in the blanks by yourself. More about this later. So now it's time to talk about the new stuff coming to the Division 2. As many of you may know, the Division's new countdown mode features hunters at the very front and center. They defend the countermeasures and are found at the extraction of the power plant, trying their best to stop the agent extraction at the end of the mode. This is very similar to survival, so, good on Massive. I have some thoughts about what could be happening here and why they're working with the Black Tusk and so on that I talked about in this video here. Since I already covered it, I won't do it here. I have more thoughts about the community significance though. Please do not ruin the mystery of the hunters Massive. While it may be cool to learn about the hunters and their motivations and what they're after, their structure and their leaders, please do not ruin the mystery and the allure of the hunters. Most of the reason for their success as a Division enemy is due to the fact that they are cool in spite of who they are. They're badass bad guys that show up when the moment is critical and try to ruin your day. They represent a challenge. Beating them will make you feel good. They also have some super dope loot. We need to keep that intact since it's one of the main reasons they're so cool for the franchise and the player base. If you're gonna create a story around the hunters, and it seems like that's where we're headed in the narrative with the next season, since it's called Hidden Alliance, and the Black Tusk and hunters are working together in the countdown mode, I implore Massive to keep the secret of the hunters intact. If we reveal all about the hunters and what they're after, then Massive, please give us a hunter raid boss. That would be the ultimate challenge for the ultimate enemies of the Division franchise. I'm gonna bring up an analogy about the difference between movies and books. Many people enjoy books more because it allows you to fill in the gaps on your own. You can make up your own story, you find a hunter, you naturally question what it's doing, why it's here, why it wants what it wants, and you kind of get to create that story on your own. Movies based on books are generally disappointing because it doesn't necessarily align with your vision of what that book looked like when you were reading it. And I really think Massive needs to, yes, tell their story about the hunters, but make it cool. You know what I'm saying? Tell your story, make it cool, but please leave some secrets. Ask more questions than you answer. But that's it for me. That's my final plea to Massive. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave it a like and subscribe. Leave a comment what you thought about the video below. I always love reading comments and answering you guys. I appreciate the support on all my recent videos and my live streams. Channel's been going crazy. This has been my best month since October, and I appreciate you guys. So don't forget to love each other and support each other. Leave a comment about what you thought about the hunters, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Leave some comments about the next Division community event you guys want to see covered. Alrighty, y'all. Deltah out. Peace.